Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today we're gonna be looking at something a little bit different, something a little bit heavier than our normal material. We're going to be looking at a 911 call.
Oh, wow.
A fictionalized narrative of a 911 call.
Okay.
So a story built around a real 911 call.
Interesting.
And this story, just to warn you guys up front, it does deal with some pretty intense themes. We're talking domestic abuse, violence. It's not for the faint of heart. But, here on the deep dive, we don't shy away from the tough stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, even though this is, as you said, fictionalized, it's a really important lens to look at these issues because, unfortunately, they are very real.
Right.
And I think, being able to explore them through this kind of narrative can give us some really valuable insights.
Absolutely. So, buckle up because this one's going to be a heavy one.
Yeah.
It centers around an 8-year-old boy named Colin, and it starts out with him witnessing a really, really intense argument between his parents.
Oh, wow.
And right away, you get the feeling that this isn't just a one-off fight. You can sense this history of tension, this undercurrent of, almost like a pattern of behavior.
And the author does a really clever job of kind of weaving in these little hints and clues.
Right.
That there's a history of abuse here.
Right. Like for example, early on in the story, you hear Colin's mom pleading with his dad to, do it for Colin's sake.
Right.
Almost like, she's desperately trying to break free from this cycle, not just for herself, but for her son,
Yeah.
And Colin is obviously, he's stuck right in the middle of it all.
Oh, I can imagine.
And you can feel his fear, his helplessness as this argument's, it just keeps escalating.
Heartbreaking, I bet.
It is. It's really tough to read. And what's even more disturbing is it's almost like he's become, I don't know, almost numb to the constant tension.
Yeah.
Almost resigned to it in a way.
Right. Like this is his normal.
Right.
This is his reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a really important point to kind of pause on for a second. Children who grow up witnessing this kind of violence, experts call this complex trauma or developmental trauma.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine, their home, which should be like, their safe space.
Their sanctuary.
Exactly. It's constantly being shaken,
Right.
And that can have, just absolutely devastating and long-lasting effects on their development, emotionally and psychologically.
Absolutely.
And then things take this really horrifying turn,
Oh, no.
The argument just reaches this boiling point.
Mhm.
And Colin's dad pulls out a gun. And we know from the story that, he's made threats before. But this time you can just feel that it's different. Like the air gets thick with menace,
Right.
And you just know that something truly terrible is about to happen.
It's almost like you're reading it and holding your breath at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And what the author does really brilliantly here is they focus on Colin's mother's reaction.
Okay.
Because instead of, pleading with her husband or trying to defend herself, she looks directly at Colin.
Oh, wow.
And her eyes are just filled with terror.
Like a warning almost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like she's trying to convey the gravity of the situation to him, like trying to make him understand the danger. And then a gunshot just rings out. It shatters the tension, and it's just this gut-wrenching moment.
Wow.
Colin's mom, she collapses. And this just chilling silence descends on the scene.
You can almost hear it.
Yeah. And we have to think about what this moment does to Colin. He's not only witnessed this incredibly violent act, something that defies comprehension, but he's also lost his mother, in the most brutal way imaginable.
Right.
Like his entire world has been shattered in an instant.
Yeah. It's just
unimaginable.
And it's at this point that the 911 call begins.
Okay.
You hear Colin's voice.
Yeah.
And it's small, shaky. He's whispering into the phone.
Oh, God.
And the operator, the 911 operator, despite dealing with, a terrified child, they somehow manage to remain calm and professional.
Wow.
You can hear them, working to gather this crucial information while also at the same time trying to reassure Colin that help is on the way.
That's amazing. They're like a lifeline for him.
They are.
Yeah.
They really are. It's a reminder that even in those, those absolute darkest moments, that there are systems in place.
Right.
There are people who are trained to help.
Yeah.
There's a glimmer of hope.
Yeah. And And then the story shifts to the immediate aftermath of the shooting.
Okay.
Colin's father, he's in shock, but, almost immediately he starts trying to justify his actions.
Oh, bro.
Like he's claiming that, that his wife pushed him.
Yep.
That he had no choice.
Right. Like it's her fault.
Exactly. Classic manipulation tactics, used by abusers to shift blame, avoid responsibility.
It's textbook, really.
It is. It's so, and this is a perfect example of, kind of that cyclical nature of domestic violence that we talk about,
Right.
where, the abuser uses charm, coercion, violence to control their victim.
Yeah.
And then, there's these periods of remorse and promises to change.
Right.
And the cycle just repeats over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it's really hard to break free from.
It is. And Colin, he's observing all of this. Silently. And he starts to see his father, in this new horrifying light.
Like the mask has been ripped off.
Exactly. And he starts to remember, all the times his mother endured his father's abuse, the fear that she tried to hide, the lies that his father told to cover up his actions.
Wow. It's like his whole worldview is just, completely shattered.
Yeah. And this is where the story takes, I think, its most unsettling turn.
Oh, gosh.
Because the narrative really starts to zoom in on Colin's actions, and it's written with so much detail that you're almost holding your breath, just waiting to see what he's going to do next.
Oh, wow.
He spots the gun. It's lying on the dresser, and it's almost like something snaps inside him.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, he's just witnessed this horrific event, Yeah. It's got to do something to him.
Right. And this is where we really have to start asking ourselves, like, what's going on in this 8-year-old boy's mind?
Right.
What is his intent?
Like, is this revenge? Is he trying to, protect himself from suffering the same fate as his mom?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it something else entirely?
Right. Like, is it some sort of, like, warped sense of justice, born out of the trauma he's witnessed?
Right. Like, he's just seen his dad use force to control the situation, and now he's mirroring that same behavior almost.
It's really disturbing.
Yeah.
And we have to remember, he's operating from this place of extreme trauma. Like, his actions aren't rational.
Right.
They're driven by this storm of emotions, fear, anger, grief, maybe even like a twisted sense of loyalty to his dead mother.
Right. Yeah.
So we see him approach the gun, his little hands are trembling as he picks it up. And his dad, he's still lost in his own world of shock and self-justification. He doesn't even notice what's happening.
Wow. It's like he's completely oblivious.
He is. And this, this scene is so powerful because it really drives home those devastating consequences of this cycle of violence.
Right.
Like it's like this, it's a never-ending cycle.
Right. Like trauma begets trauma.
Exactly.
And it shows that even the most innocent among us can become both victim and perpetrator.
It's a lot to take in. And the story reaches its climax when Colin presses the barrel of the gun to his father's lips.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's just this visceral image. It leaves no room for interpretation. The author, they don't shy away from the violence of the act, but they also don't offer any easy answers. They don't judge.
Right.
They just leave us, the readers, to grapple with those moral complexities of the situation.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. Like, we're not given a clear-cut resolution. There's no, happy ending or anything. It's the harsh reality of a situation where every choice is impossible.
Right.
And every path seems to lead to more pain.
Exactly. And then the narrative circles back to the 911 call. The operator, you can sense that something has shifted,
Yeah.
And they ask Colin, are you safe? Is anyone else with you?
Yeah. And what does he say?
And Colin's response just sends shivers down your spine. He simply says, "It's quiet now."
Wow.
And those 3 words, they just carry so much weight, They speak to the finality of his actions, the sudden stillness after the storm. But they also hint at, those deep psychological scars.
Yeah.
That he's going to carry with him probably for the rest of his life. The silence it's deafening, isn't it?
It is. It's haunting. And the story, it ends on this deliberately ambiguous note. Like, we're left with so many questions. And I think that's what the author intended. They wanted us to grapple with the implications of what we just witnessed. And
right.
There are no easy answers, no judgments.
Wow.
It's just a stark reminder that the effects of domestic violence, they ripple outward. They touch everyone involved.
In ways we can't even begin to understand.
Exactly.
It's heavy stuff, I mean, it really makes you think.
It does. It's hard to shake off.
Yeah. And, and the thing is, even though, like we said, this is a fictional story, it really does, it highlights those very real struggles that so many people are facing.
Every day. Yeah, I mean, domestic violence, it's a huge issue.
It is. It affects, I mean, millions and millions of people.
And you know, we've talked a bit about Colin, but we can't forget, the impact on children who witness this kind of violence.
Right.
It's just devastating.
It is. And I think it's easy to kind of turn away from these kinds of stories,
Yeah.
because they're so difficult to digest.
Right.
But I think it's important that we don't shy away from these conversations.
Absolutely.
Right.
We need to talk about them. We need to understand them.
Right.
And we need to support those who are affected.
Exactly. And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please know that there is help available.
Yes, absolutely. There are resources, hotlines, organizations,
Right.
that are dedicated to helping people get out of these situations.
Don't hesitate to reach out. You don't have to go through this alone.
And reaching out for help, that's strength, not weakness.
Exactly. So, I know we've covered some really heavy material today.
We have, yeah.
But I think, sometimes confronting these tough topics is the first step towards understanding.
And change, yeah.
And change. And as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
okay,
I want to leave you with one final thought. Mm-hmm. The story of Colin, it's a reminder that trauma can manifest in ways that we might not expect.
Right.
And it challenges us to look beyond the surface, to consider those complex factors that contribute to violence, and to approach these issues with empathy and understanding. And it kind of leaves us with this question: what would you do if faced with a similar situation?
That's a good question.
It is. It's a question worth thinking about. And, maybe it'll help us all better understand the human condition,
Yeah.
in all its complexity and fragility.
Well said.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation